We knew about Sebring and were working on Sebring for months before we ever set foot in town.
Wow.
So we had undercover agents were here.
Behind every masterpiece lies a mystery, and behind every artist is a hidden story waiting to be told. Erin Napier, beloved star of Hometown, is known for her charm, her creativity, and her devotion to family. But what happens when the cameras stop and the world steps outside her private studio? What was uncovered inside that space left even her closest loved ones in shock. Letters, sketches, and secrets not meant for the public eye would forever change how fans saw her. Stay with us, because what we reveal next will leave you absolutely speechless. The woman behind the brush, who is Erin Napier, when the cameras stop rolling and the lights of the set fade to black. Millions know her as the co-host of Hometown, the designer with an eye for charm and history, the woman who transforms tired houses into dream homes. But beneath the spotlight, Erin is much more. She is an artist at heart, a woman who has always turned to sketching, painting, and writing as a way of giving her soul a voice. And at the center of this hidden world lies her studio, not the polished sets seen on television, but her private haven, the room where her thoughts find color, form, and expression. The question is, what secrets does that studio hold? Could the walls of this quiet retreat whisper stories the world has never heard? While most see Erin as a confident designer and public figure, what happens when we step behind the brush and into the heart of her sanctuary? From her earliest years, Erin had a gift for creativity. Long before the fame, long before the headlines, she filled sketchbooks with drawings and journals with words that revealed her dreams, her doubts, and her hopes for the future. She often described art as her medicine, her escape, and her way of making sense of the world. But how much of that inner life has the public truly seen? Could it be that the real story of Erin Napier is not only told through houses restored on camera, but through personal creations hidden from the spotlight? When you imagine a studio, what comes to mind? Perhaps brushes lined up neatly in jars, shelves stacked with paints, or sketches scattered across a desk. Erin's studio does contain all of this, yet it is far more than a creative workspace. It is her sanctuary. Consider this. Every artist pours their most vulnerable self into their private work. What would we discover if we opened the notebooks tucked into drawers, or lifted the lids off boxes left untouched for years? Would we see the polished confidence the world applauds, or would we uncover fears, longings, and questions that reveal the depth of her humanity? In Laurel, Mississippi, Erin and Ben are seen as the heartbeat of their town. Together they breathe new life into old buildings and remind America of the beauty of small-town living. Yet even someone who gives so much of herself to others needs a place to retreat, to reflect, and to keep parts of her story hidden away. What treasures, or perhaps what confessions, lie in that private space? The studio is not only where Erin creates, it is where she remembers, where she dreams, and where she guards the most fragile pieces of her journey. And what was uncovered inside will not only surprise you, it will leave you questioning how much of our truest selves we all choose to hide. The studio that holds secrets. Every creative soul has a place they call sacred. For Erin Napier, that place is her studio. It is not just four walls and a roof. It is the heart of her imagination, the quiet chamber where thoughts take form and colors tell stories words cannot. On the surface, it appears to be a charming southern workspace filled with sunlight, jars of paintbrushes, and shelves of books that have inspired her for years. But the question remains, what lies beneath the surface of this inviting studio? Could it hold secrets that even longtime fans would never imagine? From the outside, Erin's studio looks like a reflection of her personality. Warm, welcoming, and carefully designed. Windows open to the view of Laurel, Mississippi, where the streets echo with history and small-town pride. Yet beyond what meets the eye, the room carries an atmosphere of mystery. What is hidden behind those closed cabinets? What is stored in the drawers she never opens in front of cameras? Studios are places where the private meets the public. On one side, they hold the polished creations the world is allowed to see. On the other side, they protect the raw beginnings, the failed attempts, the vulnerable notes, the unfinished dreams. Which side of Erin's story does her studio really reveal? Is it only the confident designer America admires? Or is it also the young woman who once wrestled with doubt and found healing in her art? Friends who have visited often describe the studio as calming, even inspiring. Yet a closer look uncovers a space layered with time. Boxes are tucked neatly in corners, some unopened for years. Folders filled with old papers are stacked on shelves. Notebooks are piled beside jars of ink. Each object seems ordinary at first glance, but what if they hold extraordinary truths? What if the most significant pieces of Erin's journey were never shared in interviews or episodes, but quietly locked away in this room? The studio, in many ways, is a museum of her life. Every corner holds a fragment of her story, waiting to be rediscovered. Imagine opening a sketchbook and finding drawings from her teenage years, raw and unpolished, yet brimming with potential. Imagine unfolding letters written in moments of struggle, confessing fears that fame would later conceal. Could it be that Erin's truest self is not the confident woman directing a renovation on screen, but the reflective artist who poured her soul into private creations no one was ever supposed to see? This is the paradox of the studio. It appears open and welcoming, yet it guards secrets with silence. It presents the beauty of creativity, yet it conceals the vulnerability that fuels it. And when those hidden items were finally uncovered, they told a story that shocked even those who thought they knew Erin best. What was waiting to be discovered inside this sanctuary? And why were these treasures kept hidden for so long? The answers would challenge the very way we see Erin Napier, and they would prove that sometimes the greatest revelations are found not on public stages, but in the quietest of private rooms. Whispers of discovery. Every secret begins with a whisper. In Erin Napier's studio, the whispers came not in words, but in quiet glances, subtle observations, and small moments when visitors sensed that the space held more than what was visible. At first, no one could quite put a finger on it. The room appeared tidy, yet there was an air of mystery, as though something important was waiting to be found. Friends, family, and even crew members who occasionally stepped inside noticed boxes stacked carefully in corners. Some of them were weathered, their edges frayed with age, others sealed tightly as if guarding something precious. Why would Erin keep these boxes closed while so much of her life was already open to the public? Was there a reason she chose to protect certain pieces of herself from the world? The whispers grew louder when people noticed Erin's habit of deflecting questions about her private creations. When asked about sketches that were not tied to the show, she would smile but change the subject. When complimented on a painting tucked behind her desk, she would gently steer the conversation elsewhere. Was this simply modesty, or was she guarding parts of her heart too personal to reveal? One day, a family member casually opened a drawer while helping Erin organize supplies. Inside was not paint or fabric swatches, but handwritten notes and folded letters, tied together with ribbon. The discovery sparked questions that no one could ignore. Who were those letters written to? Were they meant for Ben, for her children, or perhaps even for herself? Why had she hidden them in a drawer instead of sharing them with those she loved most? Soon, more subtle clues began to surface. A leather-bound notebook sat on a shelf, its pages worn and edges stained with ink. A stack of photographs lay beneath a pile of magazines, some of them clearly decades old. And tucked behind a stack of sketchbooks was a small box, locked and covered in dust, as though it had not been touched in years. Could these objects hold the untold chapters of Erin's story? And if they were ever revealed, would they change the way we see her forever? The whispers of discovery were not about scandal or gossip, they were about mystery. They reminded everyone who stepped into that studio that Erin Napier was more than a television personality. She was an artist, a wife, a mother, and above all, a human being with memories, struggles, and secrets tucked away in the shadows. The question grew louder with every passing day. What would be found if those boxes were opened, if those letters were read, if those notebooks were finally brought into the light? The whispers pointed to a truth too powerful to ignore. Something hidden inside Erin's studio was waiting to speak, and when it did, the world would be left in shock. The first clues. Every revelation begins with the smallest detail. In Erin Napier's studio, the first clues were not dramatic or obvious. They were quiet, almost ordinary, the kind of things most people might overlook. Yet, when taken together, they pointed to a hidden story waiting to be uncovered. Have you ever stumbled across an object from your past that instantly transported you back to a forgotten memory? Could it be that Erin's studio was filled with such objects, each one a fragment of her soul? The first clue came in the form of a drawer. A helper, looking for pencils, pulled it open and instead found a bundle of papers tied with a faded ribbon. The pages were yellowed at the edges, suggesting years had passed since they were written. The handwriting was unmistakably Erin's, neat yet expressive, filled with emotion. What did those pages contain? Were they letters of love, of struggle, of prayer? And why had they been tucked away so carefully, hidden from curious eyes? Another clue emerged when a box resting on the floor was accidentally nudged open. Inside were sketches unlike those seen on Hometown. These were not blueprints of houses or decorative plans. They were raw, personal, almost confessional. Some drawings were of faces, sketched in detail as though Erin had been trying to capture expressions of people who meant something to her. Others were abstract swirls of color and shape, suggesting moods or emotions too heavy to express in words. What drove her to create such images? Were these sketches the reflections of moments too private for the public to ever know? Some were of Erin as a child, holding a paintbrush with determination in her eyes. Others were of early days with Ben, long before fame, when dreams were still fragile and uncertain. Could these photos be the silent witnesses to a journey no one fully understood? The most intriguing clue, however, came from a notebook. Leather-bound, with edges worn soft by use, it appeared to hold years of entries. The few lines visible on the open page hinted at a mixture of gratitude, self-doubt, and hope. Words like someday and what if, repeated through the sentences. Was this her private journal? Did it contain confessions never spoken aloud, prayers whispered in ink, and dreams she had been too afraid to share? Each discovery deepened the mystery. These were not random objects. They were threads of a larger story, waiting to be woven together. The letters, the sketches, the photographs, and the journal all pointed to a woman who had lived through seasons of fear, hope, and transformation. The first clues had been uncovered, and with them came an undeniable question. If such treasures were hiding in plain sight, what else lay buried deeper in the studio? What secrets had Erin kept locked away for so many years? And when the final box was opened, would the world be ready for what it revealed? The hidden treasures. Every mystery builds toward a moment of revelation. In Erin Napier's studio, that moment arrived when curiosity gave way to discovery, and what was once whispered about became undeniable truth. Behind the carefully arranged jars of brushes and shelves of fabric swatches lay treasures that spoke not of television success, but of raw humanity. These were not props for a show, nor polished displays for fans. They were fragments of Erin's soul, hidden yet waiting to be found. The question is, why were they hidden at all? The first treasure was uncovered inside an unmarked wooden box. When the lid was lifted, it revealed a stack of hand-drawn illustrations that left everyone breathless. These were not plans for homes or renovations, but deeply personal works of art. Some were portraits of faces frozen in emotion, smiles, tears, and silent longing. Others were vivid landscapes, dreamlike scenes painted not with brushes, but with pencil strokes and imagination. Could these images have been Erin's way of processing moments too personal to share publicly? Was art her secret language, one only she could fully understand? Beneath the sketches were folded letters written in Erin's distinctive hand. Each one carried words of reflection, gratitude, or even struggle. Others seemed directed toward herself, almost as if she had been writing reminders to keep going through seasons of doubt. Why did she choose to keep these words private? Were they never meant to be read, or were they preserved for a day when she might need to remember the strength she once carried? The discoveries did not end there. A leather journal, worn at the corners, revealed prayers written in the quiet of the night. Erin had poured out her heart on those pages, pleading for guidance, strength, and peace. These were not polished speeches or scripted lines. They were the raw cries of a woman balancing the weight of family, fame, and personal battles. Have you ever wondered what your favorite celebrities say when no one is listening? Would you be surprised to know that sometimes their words sound just like ours? Uncertain, hopeful, and desperate for clarity? Perhaps the most touching find was a set of photographs wrapped in a piece of linen, Inside were images of Erin and Ben during their earliest days together. The photos showed laughter, long road trips, and quiet moments of simplicity. They were snapshots of a love story long before the world knew their names. Why did she choose to tuck them away instead of displaying them on walls? Could it be that these were not meant for anyone else's eyes, only hers and Ben's? Each treasure pulled back another layer of Erin's life. They were not relics of fame, but evidence of vulnerability, resilience, and intimacy. These hidden artifacts revealed that even someone celebrated for their creativity had a private world overflowing with stories untold. The hidden treasures had finally been uncovered. Yet one question remained, and could the most shocking discovery still be yet to come? Secrets from the past. Every artifact tells a story, and in Erin Napier's studio, the treasures uncovered pointed backward to a past many had never seen. They were not just drawings and letters. They were keys unlocking a history written long before the fame, long before the bright lights of television. What happens when the person you think you know reveals layers of a journey that few have ever imagined? Could it be that Erin's truest story was hidden in the shadows of her past, waiting for the right moment to be discovered? One of the earliest sketches found in her collection dated back to her teenage years. The paper was thin, almost fragile, but the strokes carried determination. It was a drawing of an old house, weathered and imperfect, yet somehow beautiful. Did Erin already know at such a young age that she would one day breathe new life into forgotten homes? Or was this simply the vision of a young girl dreaming of something bigger than her small-town life? Alongside the sketches were journals filled with entries from her college years. These were not glamorous notes of success, but vulnerable reflections of fear and uncertainty. Words like "Am I enough?" and "What if I fail?" appeared again and again. It is easy to see Erin today as confident and accomplished, but have we forgotten that even the strongest people once wrestled with self-doubt? Could it be that these fears shaped the woman who would later inspire so many others to believe in themselves? Tucked into one box were letters Erin had written to herself, almost like messages in a bottle meant for the future. In one, she promised that no matter what happened, she would never let go of her love for art. In another, she prayed that she would one day find a partner who would believe in her dreams as fiercely as she did. Reading those words now, knowing how she and Ben's love story unfolded sends chills down the spine. Was it coincidence, or was it destiny that her written hopes came to life so vividly? There were also artifacts of struggle. A set of medical notes hinted at seasons of pain and uncertainty in her health, challenges she had kept private for years. It raised the question, how often do public figures quietly carry burdens we never see? And could it be that Erin's ability to create beauty was born not in ease, but in hardship? The secrets from the past revealed a portrait of Erin that was both surprising and deeply human. She was not just the successful designer America admired. She was a young dreamer who battled doubt, a woman who prayed for love, and a soul who found strength in the midst of struggle. These discoveries reminded us that behind every public figure is a private journey filled with victories and scars. The past had spoken, and it had left us with more questions than answers. If Erin's studio held secrets from her earlier years, what messages might she have left for the future? And were those words meant for us, or only for the people she loves most? Messages for the future. Every hidden treasure uncovered in Erin Napier's studio seemed to point backward, but then came a discovery that looked ahead. Among the letters and journals filled with memories of her past were writings that carried an entirely different weight. These were not simply reflections or confessions. They were messages carefully written for the days yet to come. The first of these messages was found in a small notebook, its cover soft from being handled often. Inside were words written like prayers, but they were addressed not to the heavens, but to her daughters. She spoke of the beauty of courage, the importance of kindness, and the power of staying true to who you are, even when the world tries to change you. Have you ever written something to someone you love, knowing they might not read it until years later? Could it be that Erin was preparing gifts of wisdom that her children would discover when they needed them most? Another letter, sealed in an envelope and tucked carefully in a box, was addressed simply with the word, "Someday." Inside, Erin poured out her dreams for the future of her family. She wrote of her hopes for Ben, that he would always feel supported in his own passions, that he would never doubt how deeply he was loved. She wrote of her desire for her daughters to grow up surrounded by faith, laughter, and the courage to pursue their own creative callings. Why keep such messages hidden? Were they meant as reminders in times of uncertainty or as a legacy of love for the future generations of her family? Perhaps the most moving discovery was a collection of pages where Erin wrote directly to herself. They were not reflections on the past, but instructions for the years ahead. She reminded her future self to never let busyness steal joy, to always find time for quiet moments, and to keep creating art even when no one was watching. Have you ever wondered what you would say to your future self if given the chance? Would you offer encouragement, warnings, or simple reminders of what matters most? The messages for the future painted a picture of Erin as more than an artist and designer. They revealed a woman deeply aware of time, of how quickly seasons change, and of how important it is to leave behind words that outlive the moment. She was not only documenting her present, but sowing seeds into a future she knew she might not fully see. These writings raised a haunting question. If Erin had chosen to keep these words hidden, what did it mean that they were found now? Were they meant to remain private forever, or was their discovery a way of ensuring that her legacy of love, courage, and wisdom would reach beyond her own lifetime? The past had spoken, and the future had whispered, but the most powerful moment was yet to come, when these revelations would send shockwaves far beyond the walls of Erin's studio. The shockwave of revelation. Every secret, once uncovered, sends ripples far beyond the moment of discovery. In Erin Napier's case, the hidden treasures of her studio did more than surprise those closest to her. They created a wave of reflection and admiration that stretched from Laurel, Mississippi, to fans across the nation. The intimate letters, the journal entries, and the messages for the future became more than private words. They became revelations that reshaped how people saw Erin. What happens when a figure beloved for her public work is suddenly revealed to have a private world even more powerful? Could it be that what we admire most about her is not just her talent, but her vulnerability? When Ben first read some of the letters intended for him, he was visibly moved. He had always known Erin as thoughtful and expressive, but to see her private words laid out in such raw honesty left him humbled. How often do any of us receive such unfiltered declarations of love and faith? How many of us take the time to write what we feel, knowing it may be read years later? His reaction alone was enough to prove that these writings carried a weight far beyond sentiment. Friends and family who learned of the discoveries described them as both shocking and inspiring. One relative said it was like meeting Erin for the first time all over again. Another remarked that the messages revealed a depth that no television episode could ever capture. Is this not the very essence of humanity? That beneath every public smile is a world of private fears, hopes, and dreams? When fragments of the story began to circulate among fans, the response was overwhelming. Social media lit up with admiration. Some said they were brought to tears simply hearing about Erin's prayers for her children and her affirmations to her future self. Others confessed they had been inspired to start writing letters of their own, to leave behind something for their families to cherish. Have you ever thought about the legacy your words might carry? Could your private reflections one day become the most treasured part of your story? The shock was not scandalous, it was emotional. It was the kind of shock that does not leave you unsettled, but leaves you rethinking what truly matters. Erin's hidden writings reminded people that authenticity is the greatest gift we can offer. In a world filled with curated images and carefully staged perfection, here was proof that imperfection, vulnerability, and honesty hold far greater beauty. The shockwave of revelation was not confined to Laurel. It reached anyone willing to listen, and it carried with it a challenge. If Erin Napier's hidden words could change the way we see her, what hidden truths in our own lives might change the way others see us? The discovery forced everyone to ask one question: what legacy are we leaving behind? And will it speak as powerfully as Erin's did when uncovered? The power of hidden things. Every story eventually reaches a climax, and for Erin Napier, the true height of her journey was not in what fans watched on screen, but in the discoveries made within the walls of her studio. What shocked many was not just what was found, but the meaning woven into each hidden piece. Inside were sketches, journals, letters, photographs, and carefully written messages meant for the future. These were not ordinary keepsakes. They carried a weight that far surpassed any design plan or television reveal. They spoke of truths larger than Erin herself. They reminded us that the most powerful moments of a person's life are often not lived under bright lights, but in the quiet corners where no one is watching. Could it be that our true legacy is not built in what the world applauds, but in the hidden things we guard with care? The studio's discoveries forced everyone to stop and consider the sacred value of things kept private. We live in a culture consumed with visibility, where success is measured by the number of likes, the growth of followers, and the reach of public recognition. Yet Erin's treasures carried a completely different kind of meaning. They were not designed to impress strangers. They were created to bring peace to her own heart, to guide her daughters through seasons of life they had not yet faced, and to reassure her husband of her unshakable love. Does this not challenge each of us to rethink what truly matters? Could it be that the things we keep close to our families and our future generations outweigh the value of what we share publicly? What caught so many people off guard was not the existence of these artifacts, but the vulnerability they revealed. Erin has long been admired as a confident designer and television personality, yet within these private notes she appeared in her most human form. She was a woman who questioned her own worth, who prayed earnestly for guidance, who dreamed of a brighter tomorrow, and who quietly wrestled with fears. But instead of diminishing her, that honesty drew people closer. Fans did not see weakness, they saw hope. Because if Erin could carry her doubts and still rise to where she is today, then perhaps our imperfections, too, can become the very soil where strength and resilience grow. The power of hidden things is not only in their secrecy, but in their timing. A letter left unread for many years can arrive like a voice from the past, speaking louder than any carefully prepared speech. A sketch left unfinished can reveal more of an artist's heart than a polished piece ever could. A prayer written quietly on the pages of a journal can echo long after the writer has stepped into another season of life. Could it be that our greatest legacy is not in the things we finish proudly, but in the things we leave behind for others to uncover at the right time? For Erin, the hidden treasures inside her studio became her truest legacy. They reminded Ben of the depth of her devotion. They offered wisdom and comfort to her daughters for challenges still to come. They gave her fans a rare glimpse of authenticity that fame could never manufacture. And they pushed us all to ask an uncomfortable question. If someone opened the boxes, the journals, and the hidden drawers of your life, what would they discover? Would it be fear, hope, faith, or love? In the end, the discoveries inside Erin Napier's studio left the world in shock, not because they exposed flaws, but because they revealed truth. And maybe that is the greatest power of hidden things. Long after applause fades and lights grow dim, it is the unseen words and the private acts of love that will speak most clearly. Emerged a truth far more powerful than any renovation or design ever broadcast on television. The hidden sketches, the secret journals, the letters filled with raw honesty, each one reminded us that what we hide often reveals more than what we show. It leaves us asking, what treasures are waiting in your own life to be uncovered? What words have you yet to speak? What legacy have you yet to leave? Erin's story proves that the smallest notes and the simplest drawings can echo louder than applause. Keep this in mind. Sometimes the hidden things are the ones that will leave the world utterly speechless.